Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours, where we assemble every day to answer your media and tech-related production questions. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader for today. Alexander, what's our first question?
First question this morning is coming in from David Brady in New York City, New York. I had a colleague who was good at perceiving latency. When it comes to compensating, how do you determine where in the signal chain to correct, as close to the source as possible, or program out?
And we're turning around to Alexander for an answer. Dive in.
Well, so if we're talking about, for example, like a lot of the stuff that we do with both video and audio chains, typically audio will always arrive much faster than video, so we often have to compensate and delay the audio to align it to the video, especially if those two chains are completely separate. But there's also the concept of physically, like reducing latency by actually physically moving things like microphones much closer to the source, which is why in the world of live sound, we often put, if we have a band on stage, we often put microphones as close to humanly possible as that source. So that vocalist has that microphone within a few inches of their mouth. We don't want, unlike a controlled acoustic environment in a recording studio where you may want to have one ambient mic maybe further away from a drum kit or further away from a speaker cabinet to capture the sound of the space, to give the person a sense of the space that musician is playing in. In live sound, we want to get that microphone as close to the possible to improve the sound quality, but also reduce the latency and get it close. So if that's what you're talking about, there's two different aspects to that.
And a familiar face back from the road. Alex Lindsay is back on the show again. Alex, good morning.
Hello. Yeah, latency is something, as Alex said, that we deal with all the time. And I think that one of the things you want to look at is what is the minimum latency versus what is the latency for all the different inputs. Because oftentimes you may have different latencies for different devices. So the first latency is usually added by the switcher or other video processors, and that's what starts to slow down that video going through. And so, but you may have different latencies connected to it. So for instance, if you have embedded audio on a wireless camera, you'll have added latency to that location. So you have to put it in for that specific channel as it's being de-embedded. And so what you want to do is look for your minimum latency that you have there. You have to do this at least for everybody. And then in the inputs, I typically go back and we start adding latency to the individual inputs if they are more latent than those. Or need to be delayed further. I think I might have. This is my first day back. I might have gotten that backwards. So, so anyway, but you want to get to the latency that you have to get through, and then you may be adding more in some places to adjust for. The fact that different inputs may have different latencies as they come through the process. So, but generally, we try to do it at program out. I mean, if we have everything looking pretty much the same, it's latency for me is usually the last thing that happens. We dial that in on our embedder, and usually dial that in. If we don't have a lot of control over the mixer for a variety of reasons, oftentimes if we see the latency off a little bit and they're a little different between inputs, we correct for the most latent. So unless it's absurd, but usually there might be one that's 1 or 2 frames more it needs to be delayed 1 or 2 more frames to get it in sync. We'd rather have the video 1 to 2 frames ahead of the audio than behind, because our brains manage video ahead actually better. It doesn't work when it's more than 2 frames, but if you're talking about a frame or 2, when we see someone talk, their video, their video to us across the yard is getting to us before the audio. So light is getting to us faster than audio. And so our brain is pretty good at that, and it will consider that okay. What we never see in nature is the audio getting to us before the video. And so as a result, we immediately think that there's something wrong. So there's a couple different, so you can, if you have to correct for one, you try to correct for the most latent. But if you can, you want to make those final adjustments on the inputs.
And Alexander, you want to get back in on this for comment?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add also too that in sound reinforcement as well, we also have the concept of delayed speakers as well. So, for example, you want to be very careful about this process, which is why we often use software to do time alignment between all our different speakers. So you've got your front of house speakers, but you also may have side fills, delayed speakers, all that sort of stuff. So all these speakers have to be time aligned because, for example, if you have someone sitting at the back who's 200 feet away from the stage, those speakers, now sound is going to be arriving at a different time. So you need to compensate for that. So sound travels roughly at about 1 foot per millisecond, but usually we use software to actually really dial it in super accurately. And that's where all of those software programs come in, like Smart.
Hey, Alex, you want to revisit?
Yeah, and Mickey pointed out accurately that a lot of times in production we're talking about this in milliseconds, which is true. I use frames when I'm talking to folks that it's easier for them to think about in frames. But typically, if we're asking for something, we find that the average person who doesn't do delay very often can't see much lower than 45 milliseconds of offset. But golden eyes will see 15 or 20 milliseconds. If someone says it's off by 2 milliseconds, we stop listening to them. Like they're not, like we hear that though. Can you adjust that? You have a producer that's like, can we adjust that by 3 milliseconds? You're like, okay, buddy.
I always find that an interesting phenomenon that we have people in golden eyes, golden ears. We have people who are so attuned to the precision of analyzing signal flow that they've developed this ability to.
A lot of it just has to do with watching it a lot, and your eye gets used to where your lips should be. We do a thing called your P's. We have a thing that has lots of P's in it because your P, when you do that with your mouth, there's only one way for your mouth to, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, but we have a whole story about Peter with all these with Pittsburgh and pierogies and all kinds of things that force you to say a lot of P's. We find that when someone says that, we can dial it in. And most of the time, if you're working on productions where you don't have total control over the stage, a lot of times in the first minute, like we're getting close, we'll throw go 130 milliseconds or 105 milliseconds, and then we'll sit there and watch it and dial it in the first minute. If you have a good delay unit, like an FS or something like that, you just sit there and dial it in to make sure that it's just right when you don't get the time. When we do get the time, what we want to do is calculate that delay as far out as we can. So when we calculate the delay, we want to in a perfect world, we want to calculate it at the encode. So this might be a YouTube file, this might be an HLS segment. So literally we'll send out the HLS segments, but what we'll do is we'll have someone walk out on a stage with a movie slate and just walk out and look at the camera and go whack, and then they walk off. That's it. That's all I need. When I'm streaming, I go find that segment, look at what the offset is, pull it back together, and that's my number. And you can definitely make that work pretty quickly. There's a lot of other tools to use, but when in doubt, getting it at the encode, not before the encode, because sometimes you'll lose some sync in the encode. YouTube itself, for instance, varies by about plus or minus 30 milliseconds.
Next question.
This question comes in from the QR code. Patrick Hinman in Longview, Texas asks, we are wanting to show our program feed in an overflow room. We currently are using Vcoax, HDMI to coax, but have significant latency compared to front of house. What would be a better way to send program out to decrease latency? Going right back to Alex Lindsay. Alex?
I think it would depend on what your source file is. Assuming that you have an SDI source file, I would convert that SDI to fiber immediately, just regular fiber conversion. So you want to go from electrical to optical, you get to the other side, and you go optical to whatever you're going to plug into the projector. But if you're using something that's a little bit more less production and a little bit more enterprise or consumer to get the HDMI coax or whatever, I would not do that. Like I would just use whatever your source is whatever's coming out of your switcher, if it's HDMI or SDI, directly to fiber, to optical, get it to the other side, and then convert it back to exactly what it has to go into. And I think you're going to find that you don't have a lot of latency.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, fiber would be the best way to go as far as the transmission part, but where in the chain are you actually getting conversion? Because it sounds like that if you're using this HDMI to coax device, it's actually what's doing the conversion and could be adding additional frames unnecessarily. So can you keep that chain in the same flavor, if you will, but it sounds like you're having to go from SDI possibly to HDMI, but is there an NDI type solution? Or for like our house of worship, we use these things called Extron, and we do really long run, so it's over what they call DTP, and DTP then goes into a wall plate like this. So we have tons of these things. I mean, they're all over, and you could basically hear that there is a delay, but for some, we just close the door because it's kind of like, okay, this is the overflow room. There is a delay because of the conversion that's happening, and it's going to happen. I mean, especially if you're in the room where somebody's speaking in, like in our church, it's a pulpit, and then that echoes down the hall, and you can actually hear the PA from the chapel all the way into the overflow room. So we just shut the door because you are going to have that latency of all that conversion. So some of it you just won't be able to get away from.
Courtney Gooden.
Another thing to look out for, I don't know what you're going to display on in the overflow room, whether it's a projector or a big screen TV. Check the TV, because if it's not in game mode, if it's in any of the interpolation mode where it's interpolating the incoming and, adding frames to make it 120 frames per second, turn all of that stuff off. All the film look, the any of the upgrade things that they put in line inside the television itself. Many of the televisions have what they call a game mode, which is the lowest latency mode that TV will do. So it will not add latency to its HDMI inputs by taking all that stuff out of the chain.
Next question.
This one's coming in from the QR code. Mark Sanderson in Chesterfield asks, now that Chromebook Plus laptops have more powerful specs, are they a good alternative to the mini PCs or iPads for bringing slides, etc., into meetings?
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off here. Courtney?
For slides or, H.264 video, I find these little PCs to be a better deal. Chrome, you're stuck with stuff that plays back basically in a browser with Chromebooks. These have a full version of Windows 11 on them. They have multiple HDMI outputs. They have gigabit Ethernet and multiple USB 3.1 inputs, and even a micro SD card. And these are like $150, under $200. It includes a Windows 11 Pro. It'll run anything that runs on Windows, which is, anything that you're going to use for your presentation will run. Chromebook, you got to find something that runs on the Chrome operating system. So bear that in mind. I think this is a better deal and is a little more versatile than a Chromebook laptop.
Alex Lindsay.
It depends on what kind of slide decks you're trying to produce. So if they're run-of-the-mill business / education with lots of text and just stills and everything else, you could probably use anything. I agree with Courtney. Anything would not include a Chromebook. In my world, I think that the Chrome operating system is pretty brutal. The one thing I can be guaranteed of when my kids get out of school as heavy Chromebook users is they'll never use a Chromebook again. But if you have people who want to build what I would consider competitive slide decks, you will need PowerPoint or Keynote. Like you cannot build a competitive slide deck in slides. You can build something that we can all talk about. It's great for collaboration. Oftentimes we even use those slide decks as we all want to talk about them because the collaboration is so good in slides. And if you're going to print it out and deliver it or give it to someone as a PDF, slides works fine. But if you're actually building something that is going to present, that has to actually move people, PowerPoint or Keynote is going to be the one, and Keynote is still probably the best presentation tool in the world.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, I totally agree on that, because the biggest problem that you're going to have is if you're collecting PowerPoints or keynotes from somebody else, the biggest problem you're going to have is converting it into whatever you're going to be running on the Chromebook. And that could mean that fonts aren't there. That could mean that everything gets shifted over to the left, and it's just going to look ugly when you go. And usually when somebody brings you a PowerPoint or a keynote, it's usually within 20 minutes, even 20 minutes. Even if you say, we need it 24 hours before the presentation, there's always somebody that's always tinkering on their slide decks right before show.
Alex, you want to come back?
Yeah, the one thing I will say is when it comes to fonts, I just wanted to riff off of what Jeffrey said there, is that unless you have a really good reason, if you're building a presentation, build it with Google Fonts. And the reason for that, and although we're not liking their Chromebooks, we do like their fonts. When they first came out with the fonts, there was like 16 of them, and they were horrible. They were all like Helvetica, and then another version of Helvetica, and I like Helvetica, but like slight variants of it, So anyway, they have grown to 1,400, and what you can do is literally go to ChatGPT and say, I have this font. I'm looking for a Google font that's like it, and you get those. And the advantage of that is you just don't have to worry about who has the font. You just send them, you just go to Google Fonts and download it, but be very careful of using custom fonts unless you absolutely have to. It really makes production a lot easier when you use Google Fonts.
Next question.
Jim Brooks in New York asks, what is the difference between a consumer TV and a hospitality TV similar to an LG 55 UN 560?
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off here. Courtney?
I've got some of these NACS hospitality TVs. They have a hospitality mode that kind of locks them down so that don't let the users access any of the secret menus. They hide a lot of the control menus from the user, from the remote control. Also, they're usually not a smart TV. They're stupid TVs so that they don't connect to the internet, so that the hotel then can, they're designed for hotel rooms and so on. So that they limit what you can do, what you can plug into it. Usually they leave the HDMI inputs open, so you can always do that, but they're kind of locked down other than that. They also have this particular one that you pointed to has this feature where they call multi-IR, where it has specially encoded remotes for each TV, so each TV can be on a different remote channel, so that when you use one remote and you have three of them in a room, let's say for doing a conference or something, I've always had this problem when doing commercials where we have multiple displays and you have they're all the same brand, and you click the one remote to change the color on one, and then suddenly it changes the color on all of them. So you have to kind of build blinders on the remote so that they only hit the IR sensor on each one. This one solves that problem by using a special encoded infrared signal that you can have different channels so that you can set each TV for its own remote and they won't interfere with each other. So that's one handy thing that it has.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, as Courtney said, those remotes can be kind of a big deal. We had a 80-inch behind Talent for a background, and then we had the same brand of a consumer television in front that was actually two more. So we had a prompter and a program return for them. And when you hit a remote, it changed all three TVs at the same time. So imagine being under duress and having to go make a change real quick. Like they said, hey, could you change the color on the background? It's a little too warm. And so I went to hit the remote, and it was like all three changed. And now, so I had to have the PA put their hand in front of the IR for a second while we made this change, which was just a nightmare. The other thing on these commercial TVs that you'll notice is that they have a longer duty cycle, so they're meant to just be on 24/7, especially if they're for signage type applications. And then the other thing that I've noticed is thinner bezels. It depends on if they're going to do like a 4-up or an 8-up. So sometimes you'll make a video wall out of these, and so the bezel is super thin. So when you put them side by side and you're 20 feet back in like a bar or something like that, it appears seamless. But it's just made up of 8 TVs or whatever the number is.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City, New York, USA asks, converter density, tired of lots of little converters? How about a rack-mounted solution? 14,000 kroner, that's about $1,400. Does Ronny have any experience with these countrymen?
Unfortunately, Ronny isn't here today. He's probably in production, but Alex Lindsay's going to take a swing at this one for you. Alex?
Yeah, this looks really great. This is Audio Video Labs, and they have basically you can configure these. You've got a couple different modules, so you have up to 8 across here that you can decide. It's HDMI to SDI, SDI to HDMI. They've got a variety of different things you can put in, so each one can be slightly different to decide whatever you need. Now, another company that is also from Norway, they really are into transport, that you may also want to look at is Barnfind. So Barnfind is a fiber converter, all the signals kind of thing. So at an industrial level, and I wouldn't be surprised if those two companies know each other or at one point in time maybe shared employees. so they're very similar. But Barnfind is one that we've used on some pretty big facilities where lots of fiber, lots of converters, convert this to that, do it all, in an integrated system. So you may want to look at that one as well.
Guy Cochran.
Yeah, it depends on if you want to drop $1,400. The cheap way is to just get one of these ping nows that'll allow you to rack mount some Blackmagic converters, and then the trouble is how do you get out of that mess of power supplies. So there are some, actually David Brady's, the question asker, has showed a middle Atlantic power that would allow you to branch off. I do this same thing, but with a little $56 power supply that we stick in the back that's off of Amazon, and it does USB-C times 8. So you can actually line up 2 racks of these things, and that would still be cheaper than the $1,400.
Next question.
This one is from the QR code. George Cardenas in Brownsville, Texas is asking, I'm using the Blackmagic presentation converter to send HDMI to SDI and back to HDMI at a projector. It works with Mac but not PC. If I connect the PC's HDMI directly into the converter at the projector, skipping the presentation converter, it works. Ideas?
Alex is going to help you. Alex Lindsay.
It really sounds like an EDID issue. So the question is does that EDID on the converter, is it locked or is it lockable? If not, I would probably also go into the PC and look at your, and Courtney may be able to underline this more, but basically if you went into the PC and looked at your individual settings, you may need to go through and build an explicit, this is what I'm sending out of my out of the PC. The Mac is oftentimes a little bit better at, not as flexible as the PC, but a little bit better at handshaking when it doesn't know what it's looking at. So you may need to go in there and explicitly control both the resolution and the frame rate.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I don't think the Blackmagic presentation converters convert frame rates. So decimators, MDHX will take any frame rate in and convert it, whether that's interlaced or non-interlaced or PSF, whatever is coming out of that HDMI, and it will give the right EDID to the computers usually, and whatever the computer can deliver. Pretty much the decimator will tell you what's coming into it, which is great on that little LCD screen. So you can figure out what the computer is putting out and set the output of that converter to whatever works correctly with your projector. So that's probably a better solution than using the Blackmagic converters because they do not convert frame rates.
Next question.
Sigfinn Anderson in Bode is asking, what is the best practice to match Panasonic PTZ cameras on a global level? White balance and contrast seems to follow the presets, and if I have set up my presets, I have to adjust all presets individually. There must be a better way to do this.
Jeffrey Powers is going to start you out here. Jeffrey?
It's not just Panasonic cameras that do that. I have several other PTZ cameras that have the same problem. And basically what you have to do is at the beginning of whatever show, you set up all your presets. You set up the color, you match the colors, you set up the presets. And then work from there. If you've got some old presets, it's just going to bounce back to whatever color setup that you have on there. But you just have to basically start again from the beginning sometimes.
Guy Cochran.
So if it's the cameras that I'm thinking of that you have, at least at the more higher end of the Panasonics, this is a problem for people that don't know how to dig into the menus. There's something called Scope C. So in the manual, if you dig in, there's Mode A, Mode B, and Mode C. And you'll notice that inside the manual, it says that you have iris, gain, and white balance as an adjustment value. For the presets. So this is something that you go into the menu system of, let's say it's a UE150, and you set it to Scope C, and now when you assign a preset, it won't take white balance, it won't take any of the color parameters, so that when you, because we do sports, we do things where the lighting's changing throughout the day, and one of the operators before was like, oh, you can't change that. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Here, it's right here. Here's the manual. Just go to Scope C.
There you go. Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, one of the things that you want to look at is how often do you have to do this, and if you're going to do it for an event or if you're going to do it permanently, and how much time you're going to spend on it. There can be variance between even identical PTZ cameras in slight color. There could be color variations. Without a colored chart, it will be very hard for you to figure out what those variants are to make those fine adjustments. But what you want to do is get them in front of in a controlled environment. and get them in front of if they're all the same PTZs, take them all down, put them in we would put them in a well-lit colored chart 10 feet away, have them all framed exactly the same way, and see how they look on scopes. And also literally put them next to each other to see if they look identical. Color charts give you a wide range. You got to decide how much money you want to spend on color charts. The one that we use is a Chromebook chart. Looks like this. This is actually a 12. I searched it. It's a 12. We use a 28R, which is a little bit more detailed. But that's the best one in the world to use. The one that we carry around is this Calibrate Color Checker Video. They also make a little Passport that is a smaller one. But it's really important to have some kind of color chart that's accurate that you can use to compare your cameras. Now, you can go through and do the fine settings. The most detailed way to make an adjustment, if the cameras accept a LUT or if you're willing to put something in between them, is to use a lookup table. That's going to give you the most detail. It's far more detailed than the settings that the camera has. So you get everything close. But a LUT is a way to kind of really tighten all those things up. But it does take time. If you're at a facility and you're going to do this once a year, then spend a day and get them all looking just right, and then you won't have to think about it for another year.
Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, what's a good functional dual CD player for our KUHS radio station in Hot Springs, Arkansas? We're replacing 2 old CD players with wonky loading trays, so slot loading would be better, and rack mount is preferable but optional.
Courtney Gooden's going to help you out here. Courtney?
Well, I wouldn't say that slot loading would be better. I've had more problems with slot loading CD players than anything else. Because if it goes in there and you have to have the motor to suck it in, and you can get something stuck in there which will scratch your CDs when it's sucking that naked CD in through the slot. So I prefer tray loading because you can control the access. Now I found this one. I can't vouch for it, but this sounds like it would work good. There's a lot of Pioneer makes some great CD players, mainly for DJs these days. And here's a DJ one that might fit the bill here. It's rack mount, and it's 2 units that connect over a cable. So you have the drives here, and then you have the 2 controllers, and it's dual. So once you put it in a rack, you can mount this in the rack, and then you can mount this in a rack that's in front of the disc jockey or whoever is playing. And this allows much more control. You can queue up to a spot with you on a track and so on and play it back. And I think you can even control the speed of these. They also support USB inputs here on the bottom, and they're tray loaders, but it's 2 drives and 1 single rack mount. That might, and it's reasonably priced, $348 or something like that for dual professional CD media player. That sounds interesting, although I have never used these. That's from Hollywood DJ, and it's called the Gemini CDX 2250i.
Alex Lindsay?
Tascam makes them. They make the ones you want. I mean, if you have a radio station and you want to get a broadcast one, I think it's the CD6. Let's see if I got it. 6010. So a CD6010. I don't know if they still make those anymore, but the last broadcast place I had, I looked it up, and I was looking it up here because I was like, oh, that's the one I saw. It's got a little speaker in it too, so you can kind of see what's going on. It's got a ton of control on the outside. So that's the grown-up CD player that you can use for a broadcast station. Tascam makes some smaller ones that are $400 or $500. If you want it to last and not have the tray get bad over time, then just spend a bunch of money on getting a good one that has the quality. And Tascam doesn't make a lot of things that I see in broadcast stations, but this one I've seen multiple times.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, so I do agree with Tascam. They've been making those ones for years, and they do still have a production run of some CD players, but I don't think the ones that a lot of radio stations still use, the ones that are working, I don't think they make them anymore. Because they used to make this like 2U one, and it had like GPIO at the back and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. And they don't, like, if you just look at BSW USA's website, which and they're a big distributor here for broadcast products. Like, I don't see, they do sell some Tascam CD players, but I don't see any of these Tascam CD players with the advanced functionality that you would probably want. And I think this one may be slot loading, this Tascam SS CDR 250. So you may need to even go to the Sorry, I turned my mic off. You may even need to go to the used market for something like that.
Hey, if you're not in the Mukana backend system for the show, you're missing a lot because there's a live conversation that happens every day while we do this where even more really useful information is passed along. You can get there by going to officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email. It's a pretty simple process, and pretty quickly you can get into that. If you check into that during the show, you'll find a wealth of information there. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
This one's from Robert Linkram in Belmont Shore, California. LIBEC has a new family of tripods specifically built for remote portable PTZ camera setups.
Guy Cochran, can you help?
Yeah, this is pretty cool. We've just been using some regular speaker stands and putting some heads on the top. It depends on if you need this capability that this one offers for $2,839. It actually has a center column that is motorized. So for $2,839, you can get the PTZ to lift up with the foot pedal, so you're in at another $519. So $519 plus the $2,839 plus the battery, so another $1,000 there. So think about spending almost $4,000 to get this. Our friend over at Live Production Mastery, he has a way of doing this. This is branded, and he shows his studio build out where he takes 4 FR7s and he puts these in the ceiling with what looks like, he talks about it in the video, and I can't remember if this is true or not, but he uses the legs off of a motorized desk, and he's able to remotely, once those are up in the ceiling grid, he's able to control them with his Stream Deck. So take a look at this video. It's called This Studio's Motorized Camera Rig is Next Level, and you might find some cheaper alternatives and drop it $4,000. And then if you want to go higher, there is another $8,000 version of this that goes way up, but it comes from Europe, so it's super expensive. I can find the link if you're interested.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, there's a couple of uses for this. The other one that we've used in the past is called a Sackler hot pod. It used to be O'Connor, so the Sackler hot pod, and I used to own 3 or 4 of these. What they were really good for us was teleprompters. So these would go up and down. You just had to make sure when it was empty, there was a big sticker on it that said, "Don't put your head over it if you open it up," because it's hydraulic and it would just it'll move 75 pounds up, but if it's empty, it comes up really quickly. So but it is it's a hydraulic system, and it was life changing. We were doing all this stuff with teleprompters. We worked with a broadcast partner in DC, and he's like, why are you not using hot pods? And he brought one to one show, and I bought like 3 of them, and that was all we used from then on. And the advantage of that is I don't have to mess with the legs. You get the tripod where you want it, you get it close to what the height you want, but a little lower than what you want, and now you just move it up, adjust it up and down. And what happens is you start making better decisions because you can. You're not, like you can now just make the decision of exactly where it needs to be, as opposed to, well, that would be a lot of work if we had to do that again. And so I think that this LIBEC looks great. The hot pod is another one. They're all expensive because they're complicated. It's a complicated thing to do. But it is, if you do a lot of it, it's very worth it. These are very similar to PEDs, of course. So, PEDs are built to do this. They're just bigger and heavier.
Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. What does the panel think of the new Omnisphere 3?
And Alexander Knight's going to dive into it a little bit. Alexander?
Don't know. Haven't used it yet. But it is a synthesizer plugin. The problem is that there's so many people making synthesizer modules and plugins, and it's a little overwhelming. So I haven't actually had a chance to test it, but from what I've seen in the video, looks pretty cool.
Well, there you go. If you get one, Mike, and let us know what you think of it. Next question.
Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin asks, what is the use case for a Blackmagic Design UltraStudio 4K in an editing suite? All videos recorded offsite, no streaming.
Alex Lindsay, what's your opinion?
I have a couple of these. I mean, being able to do playout SDI integration with other with your external monitors. Those are the main things that we use the UltraStudio for. Admittedly, we don't use it as much out of Resolve. We use it as a playback system oftentimes. That's how we get video out. Like when we're really working on a true production and we want to get playout out of our Mac, we use the UltraStudio to do that. And same with digitization.
Next question.
Zach Stelsmith in Chautauqua, New York asks, with Liminal Apps now fully integrating with Zoom, how does one purchase a ZoomISO license?
Alexander Knight, turn right back around.
So if you actually just go to the Liminal website, it tells you here that ZoomISO is now included in the Zoom webinars and events platform and is activated when you sign in with Host Hub. So it's just got a link there. So basically, you're going to want to head over to the Zoom website and have a look at the webinar and events page and choose a plan that works for what you require. I think the lowest you can go in terms of cost is about $150 a year or something like that.
Guy Cochran?
Yeah, as Alexander just mentioned here on this page that he just showed, it's the pay per attendee. So if you want to just get in there and get your license, it's pay per attendee 50. It's $125. There's a couple gotchas to this depending on who's in charge of that account, because once you get it, regular users won't be able to just use it. You have to authorize from the admin, and then you have to be a Zoom Hub host. So that's the other gotcha. And then when you go to sign in, so when you get to ZoomISO and you go to actually sign in, you'll sign in into your Zoom browser, and then it'll authenticate, and then you'll be able to use it. So there's like a 4-step hop to get all the way in.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, just to make sure we outline it in perfect. You buy the license. Any SKU of Webinars Plus or events will work on Zoom.us website, and you can assign it usually for yourself. Number 2 is finish the account creation pop-up default hub by signing into events.zoom.us. Then third, sign into ZoomISO with your Zoom account. Also note that the capacity of the license you purchase will not be impacted if you schedule or use the regular Zoom meeting outside of Zoom Events ticketing platform. So you don't need any specific capacity as was outlined there. I was talking to a little birdie here. I just wanted to make sure it was.
Gee, I'm sure they know exactly what they're talking about. That's just my guess.
The birds around my house.
Yeah,
super
intelligent and super technical.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Hey, don't forget we have extra shows here in the evening sometimes. So if you enjoy this office hours in the daytime, come in the evening. Tonight, Thursday, The Rundown with David Paskin happens at 6 p.m. A panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech. So more goodness if you enjoy the office hours experience. Next question.
This one's from the QR code Bob up in Canada is asking, Alex, what are you using for lights in your office hours setup? Do you use any diffusion? Also, when you say bananas for scale distance, are they laid out side by side or end to end? And if so, does it include the stem? Sorry if this has already been asked.
We do not speak of religion on this show. We want to keep away from those kinds of debates. And bananas, the standard banana is 8 inches long. It does include the stem. I will admit that it began as a real banana, but it actually is a plastic representation of banana. I think Guy has one. We have the standard. That's the standard banana size. And it is end to end because it'd be really hard to put them side by side. And there would be so many more bananas. Think about how many bananas that would be. But as far as the diffusion, yes, I have. So what I have is a Nanlite 68 over here, and I have a little hair one too. I have a little one up here as well, and then I've got behind me. I have one that I set wrong the other day, but I've got 2 of the MX60s that they have there that I can control color and so on and so forth. But the one that's in front of me here is a 3-foot by 5-foot square that I made out of EMT rail. So, I'm using maker pipe. These are little connectors for EMT. So it cost me almost nothing. And then I bought some diffusion silk from Amazon for $30 and cut it up and tied it to the thing. It's not particularly pretty, but it does the job. I have one over here that kind of just diffuses across it, which is why I'm a little bit brighter on one side than the other. I'm also surrounded by sound blankets. Anything you can't see has got a sound blanket, and the white is turned in, so there's a little bit of extra reflection there. So that's how the lighting is set up for my setup. And it looks great. Nice. Next question.
This one is from Roz McNulty in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Any opinions on the new Samsung Galaxy XR headset, Gemini and Google Photos?
Alex Lindsay is going to start us off here. Alex?
I thought it was great. I thought Samsung really, it was great for them to just hang back and let Apple produce something so they could copy it like they usually do. So it is, I mean, I haven't put it on yet. I've talked to a couple of people. I was at an event that was mostly focused on the Apple Vision Pro yesterday, but some people had been able to put it on. Field of view is a little lower than it, so that they get better resolution by not showing you as much. so there's a lot of little corners that were cut to get down to the price that they have there. So that's that's what happens when you make it for less, because it's a pretty hard thing to do. I think it's great that the market is getting bigger and that there's going to be more people getting headsets. So I think that's good. I don't think it's, from everybody I've talked to that's used both the Apple Vision Pro and the Galaxy, they're not in the same class, but they are. But the Samsung is a very solid. It's basically between the Meta Quest Pro and the Apple Vision Pro. The Samsung kind of sits in between those two from the people I've talked to so far.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I think its most salient attractiveness is the fact that you can get two of them, so you and your significant other can both partake of the VR audio video for the price of one Apple headset. So, either it's like, oh honey, look at this, or oh honey, click on this, and that's going to be a lot easier to have two of them for the same price. They do offer these subscriptions. I guess Apple does the same thing for Gemini AI Pro, and you get the NBA League Pass for immersive video in there, and NFL Pro Era. I don't know what these look like on this particular headset, but you can bundle them with that kind of stuff. So they're $17.99, so that's a lot cheaper. You can get two of them for the price of one Vision Pro.
Alex?
Yeah, you can get two Chevettes for the same price as a BMW, but some people like the BMW. so anyway,
to get somewhere on the same day.
Well, yeah, but now someone can go shopping and go to work at the same time. I mean, to say that you can get two of them for the same price, it's like, okay, but it's less of a headset. So you just got to decide, And I think that the thing is that we had a bunch of discussions about it yesterday. As I said, I was at an Apple Vision Pro thing, and the issue is that it's both of these ecosystems are not really competitive. An Apple user is not looking at a Galaxy headset as really something that they're going to spend that much money on because of the ecosystem, the tie-in with all the other things that you have as an Apple user. So Apple is really just competing with itself. It's can it make it get it to a price point? And I don't think Apple has ever said that the price point that they're selling the first one at is the design down the path. It's just that's what they could make it for. And when you look at and we'll talk more about this over the next couple of weeks because I just spent 2 days, and talking about immersive production. But the amount of work and the amount of what Apple's doing is so much higher than what is being produced for the other headsets. That it is, that they're not close in quality, and so, and they're not going to, and the thing is that I don't, it'll be interesting to see if Google and Samsung have they'll build something, but it'll be clunky like the other stuff that they build. So I think for an Apple user, I think that if Apple produces something at $2,500 or $2,000 3 years from now, that's the market they're shooting for. They're not shooting for the market today. We're just a bunch of gamma testers that are excited, a bunch of geeks that want to play with it early.
Next question.
This one is from Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. Is Final Cut's Magic Mask based mostly on movement? And could one use it to create a faux bokeh for a mostly flat background for a talking head video?
Alex, what do you think?
I wouldn't use it that way. I don't think a lot of times I do things where I start using things for things that they weren't designed for. But I think that when you start talking about a faux bokeh, I think that the issue that you get into is that any problem with that edge feels weird. So if you don't get it just right, I think that you end up with something that is people are like, what's going on here? And so I'd rather figure it out in camera or not do it and figure out how to do it. But I think that faux bokehs are not something that I would do in a real production.
It's one of those things when you get to know what real camera bokeh looks like. Almost all the fakey things, even the I think very useful stuff, where on phones and things like that, you can literally touch on something, separate it out from the background, and then blur the background. And that automation is understood now. It's still, I agree with Alex, it's still a little bit funky. As to the camera tracking and the rest of that, I was trying to remember what the underlying licensed technology is. There's been a technology out there for a long time that Apple uses, and I think everybody uses, or the software developers use, to do those separations. And I don't know why it's not coming to mind right now for me, but they all license them and put them into the software. So the software all works a little bit the same in terms of creating that mask. I'll remember it another time to bring it back up. Next question.
JB Wendell in Chiang Mai, Thailand asks, Alex, you mentioned waiting for Blackmagic to release something that will give you more channels of embedded audio. Does the new Streaming 4.1 update give you what you were waiting for?
Alex, does it give you what you were waiting for?
I think it does, actually. I don't think I have any. I don't think I have anything
you
right
don't
now.
Have to wait any longer.
Yeah, exactly. I have to go back and look and see if I have something that because I haven't really invested that heavily in the Blackmagic streaming software. But this is basically streaming 4.1 update. This software adds support for up to 16 channels of embedded audio and HDR metadata, as well as improved utility list on Blackmagic Streaming Encoder 4K, the Blackmagic Streaming Decoder 4K, the Blackmagic Web Presenter HD, and the Blackmagic Web Presenter 4K. The update also supports standard conversions for Blackmagic. So theoretically, this could be a way to stream 4K HDR 5.1, and that would be the most cost-effective way to do it. Again, we've had some challenges with getting a solid stream on an ongoing basis from the switchers, but I haven't used the dedicated encoders. I think I have one sitting in my garage, so I'm going to go give that a shot.
And as what often happens with me, when I stop trying to think about it, it's bokeh tracking. Bokeh tracking is something that's across the industry. That original technology was there for tracking objects across the stream. A lot of people license it and wrap it into their software.
Bokeh, they did it by accident. You know, the story behind it, because I got to talk to the developers in the first days or the first weeks that they had released it, and they were research scientists, and they were doing some video processing, and suddenly everything disappeared. And they were like, "What happened?" Like things disappeared from they were running this algorithm, and things disappeared. They were like, I don't know what just happened. And so they once they figured it out, they realized they could invert that and do it, like they figured out how to turn it into a product, but the first time.
So it was a stumble upon. I love that. They
literally stumbled. They were running these, it was like out of the UK somewhere, and they were running these things, and suddenly things were disappearing from the screen, and they couldn't figure out what happened there. I will say though that if this works, this is a huge step forward for my I have this dream of, I know this will sound crazy, of doing the ultimate bird feeder camera. So 4K HDR 5.1. I've got almost all the pieces there to do that, and I didn't have an encoder. So that's the kind of thing that I'd probably use this for first.
Guy, do you want to weigh in on the original question or these?
Yeah, I was just wondering,
the branch.
How would you get all the SDI embedded analog audio in? Do you have something that pulls those in,
Yeah. I mean, you can use a wide variety of things to embed it. You can't use the switcher for it. So you'd have to. I don't know. Again, you would need to embed it. These are really for the streaming encoder. So you wouldn't use the switcher. You'd use something before it to embed those things. And typically, that would be the easiest thing. Would probably be the Blackmagic. Or AJA throwdown box, which is audio to SDI, and that will take the Blackmagic will take up to 8 channels via both of them are AES to get all the channels, and so it'll be up to 8 channels on the AES or 4 channels of and you need more. So there's this kind of weird embedding problem that you end up with. Embedding things can be complicated. There's Dante embedders. So there's some Dante embedders that are a variety of companies. I think AJA just released one that's, I don't know, it's like $2,000. But there's also another one that's been around for a little while. So you can send Dante and embed and de-embed from SDI, but it would have to happen upstream. We use FSs to do this as well. So the FSs can take AES in or MADI in and embed those as well. So there's a kind of a wide variety of things that can do those embeds.
If you enjoy what we do here, there's a few ways you can help. The simplest way is just to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to go the next step, you can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer, then become part of the team that makes this possible. You will learn a lot, meet some amazing people, and it's just great fun to be a part of this group. And then if those two don't work, you can always donate if you would prefer to at officehours.global/donate. We are a 501c3. Next question.
Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. asks, this may be a Sunday question, but what are some production-adjacent job positions to consider for someone currently working in production who's on the verge of retirement?
Courtney Gooden, what are your opinions here?
Well, it depends on what you did in production. You know, if you were a camera operator or were you a sound mixer, were you a production coordinator? Depends on what your job was in production. You can mentor other people. Maybe find an educational institution that has a film school or something near you. You can become a teacher or a mentor to new people coming into production, because nothing's more valuable in an educational situation than someone who has worked in the field, in the industry for a long period of time, because they know all the pitfalls. They're not just coming out of a college course that learns about production and what production should be. You have to have that practical experience on the set to know what's going to, set your production back or be a hindrance, or how to solve problems, because that's the most important part of learning production is problem solving. Another thing you can think about if you're looking to be into a desk job or retirement, if you've had a lot of experience in production, is production equipment rental. If you find a rental house that rents production equipment that covered the area of production that you're experienced in, they always need a good person who is handling a rental department that knows about the pitfalls and how stuff has to be prepared and how it's going to go out and how it's going to be used in the set and what to look for when it comes back to reset it, those kind of things, and to keep the equipment in working condition and can deal with the immediacy of production requirements, where when something breaks in the set, they've got to have a replacement ready to go that's, set up the same way as the one that they rented. So you have to have someone on hand that knows how to set up that equipment for that particular need. So rental houses need people with production experience as well.
Alex Lindsay.
If you're in Discord, keep your eye out for a post. We're going to be putting out a post. We need people potentially all over the country. It's production adjacent. It's not hard production. It's just that we need technical people. We'll be putting that out in Discord. Of course, you can go to officehours.global/join. If you're interested, get into Discord. You'll see that announcement over the next day or so. We're going to be looking at identifying where everybody is. We've put these out before. We're going to put it out again because we need more accurate addresses, not your actual address, but something closer so that we can identify exactly where you are in relationship to the sites that we're going to be covering. So keep your eye out for that. But you'd be the perfect person for that kind of thing. It's technical enough I can't send an average person, but not so technical that there's any specific training that you would need.
Next question.
From Idris Haggy in Fairfax, Virginia. This is an IT support question for AV subject. How do I encourage visiting presenters and faculty to plan for their presentation, specifically setting the PowerPoint correctly, know their way around MS Teams? I have spare USB-C dongles and laptop just in case.
If you solve this, I can help you make $1 billion because we've all been trying to solve this forever. But Alex Lindsay, dive in.
I mean, for the most part, we do the best we can for large events. We take the presentations away from the presenters, so we don't let them. We oftentimes conform them, and that can be. It used to be that we just conform everything to Keynote and then let them just use a clicker that gave us an arrow. Like it didn't. They're not even actually touching the actual slide because they make mistakes, and so. So anyway, so we would do that. We would conform them in some cases to PowerPoint because they'd have the ones that you generally have the hardest time with are people who do a lot of PowerPoints and use all the little tools and all the little bits and pieces and want to have zany approaches to how they show things. But as far as the setting it, a lot of it has to do with, number one is for things that matter, and it just depends on how much leverage you actually have with them. For the events that I do that are in front of a lot of people or people that matter, people are calling me and they want to see the slide deck 6 weeks in advance or 3 weeks in advance, and they want it to be totally done. And so I'll produce that. and then we'll have discussions and we'll update them, and we're updating them constantly between the time that I'm scheduled to the time that I'm actually presenting. So you want to be, working with folks to try to do that. A lot of times it's hard. A lot of presenters will be working on it. If you don't do that with me, for instance, I'll be working on my presentation until, well, sometime during the event. during the actual presentation, I'll still be changing things. So I think that pushing that horizon of events away really helps. Giving people a template also helps. Giving them here is what we want you to do, and you want to give that to them early, not when they've already worked on it. And so then they'll go, oh, that's easy. I can just use these slides. So they have a whole slide deck templatized that they can just use. That makes it a lot easier for them to do it the way you expect them to do it. Oftentimes a one page with lots of imagery, not a lot of text, guides to, how big the text should be and how many words they should use and how they should do those things oftentimes helps. But if that guide has more than 100 words on the whole thing, you may have trouble getting them to read it. So you kind of have to be very careful of, it's really mostly pictures of do this, don't do this, do this, don't do that. All of those things tend to help a little bit with trying to guide people down in the corral.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, the more information that you give them to do, the less that they're going to do it, because they'll go, oh, I'll look at that later. So bite-sized information. If you're going to do videos, don't do one long video, do short videos where it takes a break and goes to the next video, because then they can stop at certain points and then work it from there. But the reality is you can consume something and then a couple hours later completely forget what you just consumed. So having the ability, having somebody there that can help them through is always going to be the best solution.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is asking, I have the original Raspberry Pi from an office hours project collecting dust. How can I use it to replace an expensive MacBook as a recorder for House of Worship?
Jeffrey Powers is going to help you out. Jeffrey?
If I remember the project correctly, these were either Raspberry 3s or Raspberry 4s. If they were the Raspberry 3s, I would not use them for recording. I pulled out a Raspberry 3 to do a different project, and it was super slow. So recording video is going to be choppy, and you're not going to like the results, that's for sure. I'm not sure if a Raspberry 4 can handle that, but check the model on there. I would probably think about that Raspberry doing something other than recording video. And yeah, I know you got the MacBook, but there are other devices that you can obtain that even used laptops, used computers that are going to be fairly inexpensive that you can use for recording, and they'll do a better job than that Raspberry Pi.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I concur. You don't want to use a Raspberry Pi for recording high-def video. It's not really good at doing in real-time encoding. So a better choice would be, if you can afford it, is to look at even if you're at 1080p, one of the older Blackmagic video assists that are in the HD version, the 5-inch, because with this you get a lot of things, extra things to do besides doing your recording. You have dual media, so it'll take 2 SD cards, so it'll move over from one. When one card fills, it moves to the next one, so you don't have to worry about running out of space in your recording. When the person delivering that sermon gets a little wordy and the service runs over half an hour, you don't have to worry about it exceeding the amount of media that you have installed. Plus, it gives you things like scopes and the ability to send separate audio in, and a whole lot of features that you don't have if you're just using a MacBook for recording, your service as just a file. Also, it's more versatile in the types of files that it can record. It can record, ProRes and or H.264 files, depending upon, and MXF files if you want to get back into editing later. But that would probably be a better solution for you than trying to repurpose an old Raspberry Pi.
Next question.
This one is one of my questions. Mr. Lindsay, what are your thoughts on the faster M5 powered Apple Vision Pro?
Well, you don't want faster, do you, Alex?
As many of us have said, we really felt like the first generation Vision Pro was an excellent step forward, but just barely enough. And so the M5, without changing the price, has put in a lot more power, so that it can handle a higher frame rate. We're seeing some of the jumps from 90 to 120. We're not sure if that 120 frames per second is going to also translate to played back video, but it does have some graphic support. It's allowing there's a thing called foveation. Foveation basically has more resolution where you're most likely going to look at it, and less resolution around the edge. And folks that are using the M5, I don't have the M5 yet, are noticing about a 20 to 30% increase in that foveation, so that things are a little bit sharper, and that's because of the hardware. So I think that there is, and I think a lot of the benefits that we're going to see are going to happen down the road when as people start to build towards the more powerful chip.
Courtney, a real quick one. We're at the end pretty much here.
Plus, you get a brand new strap that has the head piece.
The funny thing is, I don't know how
and it's weighted in the back.
I've been buying a lot of stuff recently to support shooting for the headset, and so I'm buying the actual headset might take me a little bit of time, but I'm definitely buying the new strap.
There we go. Hey, thank you for watching today and participating. To all of our producers, those of you who put questions in the show, you really do drive everything we do. So thank you. Your questions are always super intelligent and super interesting, and we appreciate your being the programmers of this show by doing that. To the panelists who show up freely every day here and just help people answer questions, try to demystify the technology that so many people, it's not that they have trouble using, but this is a complicated, changing landscape. And so to find help, that's our purpose here. So thank you, panelists, for being the key constituency of that. To the back-end crew, the amazing back-end crew scattered all over the world who really does an amazing job of keeping us all on track and together. Thank you so much, everybody. You'll see a few of the names as the credits roll here at the end, but there are a lot more than that, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Our Telok traversal today, if you'd tried to go around and get this information, you would have traveled 53,000 miles. That's 86,000 kilometers. 422 million of these guys. That's the banana for scale. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget the rundown tonight, and we will see you tomorrow.
Now I got to go back to I somehow shot 20 terabytes of footage last week.
Oh my gosh!
Good luck on rendering that.
Yeah.
Another 15 weeks.
My little mini M3 Ultra is going to be sitting there just jamming.
You're missing
away.
the days of 20-minute Betacam loads.
Yeah, exactly.
You were
exactly.
I better not shoot this because
exactly.
Were you at the Media Technology Summit, Alex? Was that where you were?
I was at the
MTS.
No. There was another summit in Cupertino.
Oh, okay. There was one in L.A. that had a whole thing on immersive video.
Yeah, that was last week, I think. I did.
Yeah.
I almost made it, but I had my schedule didn't support it. I was in Lidditz last week.
Oh, okay. Good to see you back.
Yeah, good to be back.
See y'all tomorrow.
See ya.